Phil Hawes against Bruno Ferreira in the middleweight division. And this is an interesting fight at first look. Both of these guys are coming off of a knockout loss in pretty devastating fashion. And when I'm looking at a matchup like this, I say to myself, Phil Hawes, he's a guy that I think the UFC has kind of tried to cash out. That's not a very polite thing to say, but that's what it looks like to me in terms of how they're matchmaking Phil Hawes. He goes from fighting Duran Win, right? Getting an easy win, so to speak, right? Goes out there, earns that, no problem. But then he's faced with Roman Dolidze, top guy, dangerous, talented in all positions. And not only does Roman Dolidze knock him out in brutal fashion to end that fight, prior to the finish, he rips a deep heel hook and appears to damage the knee of Phil Hawes pretty significantly. And for me, one of my biggest betting regrets of the year is not hammering Ikram Alaskarov ITD against Phil Hawes. The reason being, he had his knee destroyed and he got brutally knocked out, which is not the first time that's happened in his career. He's been brutally knocked out many times. But then they put him against a Russian killer who also, has the capability to knock him out on the feet or submit him on the ground. It just seemed like they were doing him no favors. And I'm looking at a guy in Bruno Ferreira who, bursts on the scene with a nice win over Gregory RoboCop Rodriguez. That's not a win that a lot of people have in the UFC. RoboCop is a pretty tough guy. He's had a little bit of up and down results, but we've got to remember he has the wins over Tululian, Injakwani, Marquez, Jin Young Park, Dusko Todorovic, Josh Fremd. So he's not a guy that is lacking for some quality wins. And Bruno Ferreira was able to starch him, right? Catch him early, knock him out in the first round. But unfortunately, he was dealt the same fate by Nursultan Ruziboev. A lot of people were saying Nursultan had no chance. He was a bum. He was a fraud. But I was looking at a guy in Nursultan who was absolutely massive. If you look at the size differential in that fight, guys, he was 6'5" compared to just 5'10" for Bruno Ferreira. And there's no reach listed on Tapology, but I believe he also had a significant reach advantage in that spot. So for me, I bet Nursultan Ruziboev. I thought that was a good bet. Last year on the money line at plus 190 because he had such a big size advantage. And you have two guys that were going to go out there and swing and bang. And the truth is, I don't know all that much about, Bruno Ferreira. I feel like he hasn't fought that many tough fighters, but he beat Leon Aliou on Contender Series. He beat Gregory Rodriguez in the UFC. So he's not a complete slouch, right? He's got some real wins, but he can get chinned in the first round. I'm looking at this matchup, though, and I say to myself, who does the UFC want to rebuild out of these two guys that both got knocked out in the first round in their last fight? And I think the answer is obvious to me, which is Bruno Ferreira, right? He's a slight favorite in this matchup, and I think that's probably fair. Now, what's interesting is he's dealing with another guy who's not going to have as significant a height advantage, right? He's not 6'5" or whatever like Ruziboev, but Phil Hawes is going to be 6 foot tall compared to just 5'10" for Bruno Ferreira. He is going to have a significant reach advantage here with the arm reach, but I just don't know that Phil Hawes is going to be able to leverage that. I think we've seen at times guys are able to get to Phil Hawes with power shots. They're able to hurt him bad, and also they're able to mix in the grappling. So I think that this is a interesting, matchup on paper, but I'm definitely leaning towards the Bruno Ferreira side here as, who the UFC is looking to get behind, who they're looking to rebuild. And I think Evolution Thai is not a bad gym, right? It's not as quality as Killcliff, but I think that, he's probably getting good training, good looks in, and he's a young-ish, right? Only 31 years of age here and hasn't suffered as many knockout losses. So for me, I just think it's much more likely that Ferreira can bounce back here and kind of find himself again. Whereas Phil Hawes, I think the ship may have sailed a little bit on his potential at 35 years of age with the catastrophic knee injury, with the multiple knockout losses at critical points in his career. Those are some things I can't ignore. Shout out to the chat. Kalastrom says, "What's up, bro? What are you doing for New Year's turn up?" Not too sure. I think I might just be, partying with the fam or something, but we'll see what happens, brother. Either way, I wish the best to everybody. Happy New Year's to all you guys. And without further ado, we can move on from this fight to the next fight. But I think Bruno Ferreira probably gets it done and probably gets it done by knockout.